Today we are going to make some homemade granola, and this recipe was so simple. It was only 5 ingredients and didn't take any prep work at all, hardly. It was so easy. But one of my big goals for our family, this year is to really work on making everything ourselves as much as possible. Now, there will always be limitations to that, but for me, I like to start with things that we eat really frequently. And granola is definitely something that we eat pretty often when we buy it at the grocery store, which is what, we've been doing either at the grocery store or at the farmer's market. This can cost you, you're looking at anywhere between $6 to $15 per bag, depending on what it is that you're buying. Now, the grocery store ones, they typically have, a lot of them are like 11 ounces. You're probably paying about $7. If you're doing the farmer's market, you're going to get anywhere from 11 ounces to probably 16 ounces in a bag. It kind of depends. But those prices, they're going to range. They're going to be more, at least here where we are, it's more $10 all the way up to probably $15. Could be more or less, depending on what it is you're actually purchasing. So if this is something, like we do, that, you're purchasing it on a regular basis, you should really consider, is it better if I make it myself? And for me, I did the math. I did, the math of how long does the prep work take? What am I putting in this price-wise per ingredients? And it makes so much more sense for me to just make it myself. And like I said, it didn't take any time at all. So we will be doing this from here on out. Now this recipe, like I said, is super simple. It's only 5 ingredients, but I'm going to play around with modifying it a million different ways. And you can as well. You can add coconut flakes. You can add nuts. You can add almonds. You can add chocolate chunks. You can add, there's so many varieties of what you can do with it. This is just a recipe for a very basic granola, and the granola turned out so well. If you actually see in the beginning, this made 3 full pints, but in the beginning of this video, that first pint only has maybe 2/3 of it left because my toddler and we already took a big crack at it because it tastes so good. Now, the 5 ingredients that you're going to need for this recipe are old-fashioned oats, and you do need 4 cups if you're going to make the 3 full pints like I did. You'll also need a stick of butter, so it's going to be half a cup of butter. You're going to need maple syrup. I use probably 1/3 of a cup, maybe a little bit more. If you want it to be sweeter, use half a cup. But maple syrup is going to be one of your more expensive ingredients, especially, depending on where you buy yours. So I kind of lean towards using a little bit less. And especially because a lot of times when we eat granola, we eat it on yogurt, or we eat it with something that, like berries, that give it a little bit of extra sweetness. So I don't need the granola to turn out with a super sweet flavor. But if you want yours to have more of a sweet flavor just by itself, I would lean into a little bit more maple syrup. So we've got the oats, the butter, maple syrup. Probably, I kind of eyeballed the salt for this. I would say half a teaspoon of salt. We'll go with that. And a teaspoon of vanilla extract. That was it. For the way that I kind of process this together, I just got a pot, like you can see on my stove right there. And I melted the stick of butter first. And then I added the other ingredients to it to kind of blend it all together. And then once that was all blended well, I poured all of those liquid ingredients over top of the oats and just stirred it. You stir for maybe 3 minutes. You're just really making sure all the oats are kind of evenly coated with the mixture so that they all have that flavor to them. And then spread it out on a baking sheet. This is a fairly small baking sheet that I have in my cooking, and I was able to fit all 4 cups. Hold on, baby. I was able to fit all 4 cups of the oats onto that baking sheet, and it was probably half an inch thick, I want to say. And honestly, I don't think I would have wanted it to be thinner. So I think I will stick with using this kind of slightly smaller baking sheet so that when I bake it, it is kind of thick. I don't want it like a super thin sheet because I like to have some chunks. And in order to get those chunks, you kind of have to bake it a little bit more layered. So you could even do a little bit smaller baking sheet if you have one that's deeper, so that you have room for a little bit more height with your oats. I just don't have one that would work quite that well. I have some glass ones. I don't know how this would bake in my glass baking sheets, but I will definitely play with it one day and just see what happens. Now for this, I did the oven on 300. So you're doing a pretty low temperature. And then I wasn't exactly sure how long to bake it. So I ended up checking it like every 10 to 15 minutes, but you don't need to do it quite that often. Overall, I baked it for around an hour and a half, and that's what got it to where it was a consistency that I really enjoyed. Now my toddler is going to be eating this, and she still doesn't have a lot of teeth, so I did not bake it to where it was super crispy. If you want it to be super crispy and crunchy, just let it bake longer. It's honestly just preference on how you like your granola. This had a crunch to it, but it was very easy to chew it. And that was what I was going for. I think you saw in the video a second ago, I was showing you this canning set. I've talked about it in a few of my recent videos. I am such a thrift shopper. I will thrift shop for literally everything in our home. Now, I'm very particular about the things that I want, but I'm patient. So I will wait on it. And this set on, if you bought it on Amazon or online, runs around $20, and I found it for way less than half the price of that at a thrift store the other day, and it had never been used, which is like, thrift shopping is such a rush. I love it, and I will talk about it in many videos, so if you stick around, plan on hearing about it. But this granola turned out super great. It was super easy, and like I said, it's how I'm going to be making our granola from here on out, so I highly recommend. If you guys enjoyed this video, I like to talk about baking things at home, homemaking, kind of simplified, talking about moving towards a homestead type of lifestyle and raising babies.